The Scotland bowlers got absolutely hammered by Afghanistan in this last game, and then they went out to bat and Mujib took a bunch of wickets with some help from the pitch and a little bit of the outside edge of leg stump.
This is the last knock. My dad refuses to tell me what this means.
Scotland was never in this game, but it was the bowlers getting hit that really set up the win for Afghanistan. But there was one bowler who didn't get hit. And here's the thing, he's a bowler who doesn't get hit a lot. I'm going to assume that unless you're the most hardcore Scottish cricket fan ever, or a left arm finger spin obsessive, you're not really going to spend much time thinking about Mark Watt at all. But Mark Watt is doing something that is different to other bowlers, and his success is remarkable really considering what he does, and it's really worth taking a bit of a deep dive on. I didn't know much about Watt before I was hired by the Edinburgh Rocks, which was a cricket team, not an enthusiastic high school musical. And then I went on to work with the Scottish team. And at that point I was having a look at his numbers and thinking, he seems like a pretty good bowler. But when you watch him bowl, it's not obvious why he's a good bowler. But before we get to that, it's worth talking about the game that he actually got famous in, which led to a brief career in county cricket. When Scotland beat England at the Grange, that incredible victory, probably Scotland's most famous victory ever, it was an incredibly high-scoring game. All the bowlers in that match, and there was a lot of very good bowlers in that match, got tapped, except for this young guy called Mark Watt. In this one day, his overs went for 55 runs and he took 3 wickets. This meant that Lancashire offered him some games on the back of it. He didn't last at Lancashire, but the next year he went to Derbyshire, and they didn't re-sign him either. To be fair, English county teams aren't exactly running out to get young Scottish spinners as a normal thing. So the fact that he was signed by 2 of them is still quite an achievement. But I can also see why, if you were working for a county and you watch Mark Watt, even when he was effective and at times for Derby he took some wickets, there was clearly talent there, you could see why they would just move on from him. Because when you watch Mark Watt bowl, there is almost nothing that stands out that tells you that he's an exceptional bowler. He doesn't have great flight, he only spins it one way, and by spins it one way, it would be fair to say that he kind of just doesn't spin it at all. And this isn't a hit job on Watt, because I would say that the fact he doesn't spin it, he almost turns that into a superpower in a different way. But what I'm saying is, he's a left-arm finger spinner without much turn, without much height, who can't really bat that well, and you can see why teams just went, why are we signing this young Scottish guy? But what Mark Watt looks like is not what he actually is, because he's an incredibly effective bowler. And I think he might actually be a throwback to other kinds of bowlers. I'm going to say other unsexy names here. Michael Beer of Australia and Mike Yardy of England. 2 guys who bowled left-arm finger spin in a way that isn't really like the traditional sense. It wasn't poetic like Venkatapati Raju, or, it didn't have a nice tall action like Dan Vittori. If Mike Yardy and Michael Beer don't instantly come up in your mind, perhaps you might remember the test versions of these kinds of bowlers, Ashley Giles and Paul Harris. Sort of defensive spoilers, but they also all had a particular kind of physicality to their bowling. Basically, these are not the kind of finger spinners that you expect to see coming out of Asia. They're not traditional in that sense. You could call them strong left-arm finger spinners or, Western finger spinners. But you simply don't get bowlers like Yardy and Beer and Watt from Asia. Even Imad Wasim, who is another spoiling left-arm finger spinner, sort of bowls it in a different way again. He's almost an in-swing bowler. These guys aren't specifically in-swing bowlers. I think the most important thing about their bowling is their physical strength. They're all quite big in their chest, have big shoulders. In some cases, they were former fast bowlers who just weren't that fast. Conventional finger spinners, and especially those from Asia, generally bowl fuller lengths. They use flight and guile and spin. Beer and Yardy and Watt don't really use those skills. They hit a hard length. They cramp you up. It's almost more like slow medium pace bowling than it is any kind of finger spin, but then they use a couple of finger spinning tricks along the way. Their wickets usually aren't through great deliveries. In fact, it's rare to see like a highlight package of any of these 3 guys take wickets and go, wow, this is exciting. Generally, the wickets come from this spoiling plan that they've come up with. And they usually look at a batter and very quickly they can work out the exact line and length, quite often a cramping line and a back of a length. And they squeeze through wickets, through mishits, through sliding the ball through frustrating batters, really. They're just trying to stop you from hitting them for boundaries. And they do use little tricks from left-arm spin, like the angle, sometimes the height, also the change of pace. But they're hitting hard lengths, just as left-arm finger spinners. And they don't spin the ball much at all. And it doesn't seem to affect their bowling one iota. And you can't do what these guys do without being an incredibly smart cricketer. Years ago I talked to Michael Beer about this, and the kind of preparation he put in for every single batter was extreme in an era when bowlers weren't really doing that. I've worked with Mark Watt as well, and you can just see how clever he is, how quick he is to work out where a batter is trying to hit him and just make that as uncomfortable as possible from that point onwards. Also, in Watt's case, he has a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. When he goes up against left-handers, if it's not working for him, he will try a left-arm wrist spin as well to spin the ball away from the bat, even though he's not particularly good at it. He's just always trying to keep one step ahead of the batter. One thing that I like about him is just how much he uses the crease. My favourite bit is just how wide he is on the crease. You can see here that his front foot actually lands outside the return crease, which to some people might look like a no ball, but this is actually perfectly legal. It's your back foot that causes the no ball on the return crease. But that extra angle, quite often bowlers are close to that, but he's like right around it all the time. And he can change that angle whenever he wants to. And for a spinner, he has an exceptional Yorker. He has a fairly fast arm, but more importantly, he's just incredibly accurate with his Yorker, which is something that some spinners struggle with. That allows him to get out of dangerous overs in a way that other spinners cannot. He also sometimes just bowls back from basically where the umpire is, which gives T20 batters who are trying to hold their shape together so they can hit you as far as possible just some extra problems. He's just brilliant at bowling to his field as well. Michael Yardy was also perfect at this. He makes it hard for you to hit boundaries, but also hard for you to easily hit singles. There is an element of risk in attacking Mark Watt. And because of his length and his strength, he doesn't actually get swept that much, which for a lot of T20 batters causes some problems. And because he is a little bit quicker, it's not particularly easy to get down the wicket to him. There's also when he bowls. He can bowl in the power play the same way that Michael Beard did. In fact, he's brilliant in the power play, a very good wicket taker, and he doesn't go for many runs. Like most spinners, he's also quite good in the middle. Unlike most finger spinners, he takes wickets in the middle at a very good rate. This is when Mike Yardy was obviously at his best. But the added advantage for Scotland is that Mark Watt is also willing and able to bowl finger spin at the death. He's probably not a frontline death bowler, but he's a decent backup option. There aren't many finger spinners in the world who turn the ball one way who can bowl at the death, and that's because most of them get hit. And yet Watt is still a good option here for Scotland. And there's one other really interesting thing about Mark Watt. He has a better bowling average against left-hand bat, and also a better economy against left-hand bat. Now, part of this is just because he doesn't spin the ball back into left-handers, even though he looks like he's trying to, and even though on occasion he can a little bit. He will use over the wicket and around the wicket to them. He will use the crease. He will use his pace. He'll use that Yorker. He'll cramp them up. He'll make it so they can't sweep him. He'll make it so it's very hard for them to slog sweep him. And he'll keep the stumps in play all the time. And left-handers just don't handle him particularly well. So think about this. How many left-arm finger spinners in T20 cricket can you think of that can bowl pretty adequately through all three phases of the game and are actually better against left-handers than right-handers? Well, I'm going to be honest. I think it might just be Mark Watt. I did have a look at all the high usage left-arm finger spinners in T20 cricket over the last 4 or 5 years. And in them, I can only find a handful that are actually better against left-handers than right-handers. And of course, Mark Watt is right up there. But when you factor in where he can bowl and the flexibility he gives Scotland, he's just an absolute phenom. But the thing is, I've said all of this, and if you were now to go and look at his highlights, you're going to be like, what on earth is Jarrod talking about? He just looks like, well, a part-timer really. There's no real guile or anything noticeable about his game, and he isn't spinning it to a comical degree at times. And yet he gets wickets, and he goes for a low economy. Left-arm finger spinners usually do one or the other. The combination of both is really, really impressive. And then the ability to bowl all the way through the innings and the fact he can bowl to left-handers, that's an incredibly weird package. And Mark Watt is an incredibly weird bowler. I can see instantly why Derby and Lancs had a bit of a look at him and just went, this isn't for us. And I can see why no other counties picked him up since then, and he hasn't gone out on the T20 franchise circuit that much. He's a left-arm finger spinner who can't really bat and isn't a brilliant athlete in the field. And when you look at him, he looks like nothing much at all. But his numbers just keep getting better. The smarter he gets, the harder batters find him. I expect later in this tournament for him to get some treatment just because he can't keep going at less than a run a ball. Especially if the Scottish bowlers are occasionally going to get smacked around him. Mark Watt is a strong Western left-arm finger spinner who doesn't bat much and isn't a gun in the field and doesn't turn the ball. but can bowl all the way through the innings and bowls really well to left-handers, and when you look at him, it doesn't look like much until you look at the scorecard over and over again. He just isn't the kind of cricketer that fans gravitate to. But he's an incredible spoiler bowler in T20 cricket. And if you're looking for a cult favourite, and if you're looking for a bestseller, it's never going to be Mark Watt. But if you're looking for a cult favourite, this is a good cricketer to pay close attention to. And to see what he's really doing, you have to watch way closer than with any other bowler.